Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the RPO Expert Panel on the State of Total Talent Acquisition. This is Lamis Aburama, Executive Director of the Recruitment Process Outsourcing Association. It's my honor to welcome an esteemed panel of total talent experts to today's discussion. You'll hear from them shortly. But first, I would like to introduce today's moderator and good friend of the RPOA, Brian Delle with Talent Tech Labs. Brian has been a leading force in driving innovation throughout his career, having served in president and chief operating officer roles at both public and privately held engineering and staffing services companies. He started his career in the international power generation sector and moved to the environmental engineering field before coming into human capital management. Throughout this span, he has amassed a wealth of insight into effectively applying innovation. Talent Tech Labs is entirely focused on analyzing technological developments in the field of talent technology. The company helps buyers and users of talent technology solutions gain a better understanding of the complex market and provides them the strategic direction of transform their business through the intelligent use of technology. Welcome, Brian. It's a pleasure to have you here today, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Lamis. I'm very happy to be here and joining this audience and these experts on the panel. Talent Tech Labs has enjoyed our partnership with RPOA, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to have this role on today's discussion. For those that are listeners who might not know too much about Talent Tech Labs, let me just give you one more click on what we do so that it provides some context to this conversation. We were formed about 8.5 years ago inside of a contingent staffing firm that was very interested in using technology to better enable the recruiting process, create better candidate experience, and better hiring manager experience. And so we were very familiar with the entire contingent side of things. As we built Talent Tech Labs into the research and advisory firm that we are today, where we provide advice to the people buying these technology tools to make recruitment better, and we've actually fallen into a very large market of talent acquisition on the enterprise side. So the biggest part of our client base are actually the TA departments of enterprise clients. So we support them with the choices they have to make around technologies and tools and workflows and processes and best practices. We also service the staffing industry and, of course, the RPO industry. But I only bring that up because we did start our life in the contingent side, and today we're on the other side of the moat with those in talent acquisition. So enough about that, but I really am interested to get our panel introduced because they're all experts in their own rights. And so I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, talk about your current role for a minute, maybe take us through your career a little bit as to how those experiences might be informing your inputs today in this conversation. And so let's start with Jen Spicher in the Detroit area with LevelUP. You got the floor, Jen.
Hi, everybody. Jen Spicher. I'm with LevelUP. I've been doing this in the workforce industry now for 25 years. LevelUP is a 10-year-old firm that specializes in recruitment process outsourcing and contingent workforce solutions. And we specialize in the mid-market space. We are global. We have offices in the UK, as well as boots on the ground in Asia Pac and Canada. And of course, in the US, our office is headquartered in New York City. We specialize in professional technical talent, very strong in investment banking, financial services, technology, healthcare IT, and healthcare. My career spent about 8 years managing RPO and MSP practice at Kelly OCG. Just recently was with TalentWave, which is an IC compliance and payroll provider for 4 years. And now I've spent the last 2 years at LevelUP and excited to be with you all today.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. Jason, how about you introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, Brian. Thanks again. Really looking forward to the panel discussion today around total talent management. My name is Jason Krumwiede. I live in Nashville, Tennessee with my wife and 3 daughters. I'm currently with Broadleaf. I've been with Broadleaf for about the past 6 years, and my role is an executive vice president. So Broadleaf is, again, similar to Jen, a total workforce solutions company focused on RPO services, managed service programs, payroll, direct sourcing, and SOW services. So really the full cycle talent wheel of services. We focus both on the large market as well as mid-market industries that we serve: financial services, advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, technology, retail, and hospitality are our focuses. So for the discussion today, I've had responsibilities for leading client direct delivery teams, all of our client delivery teams across North America, as well as India. Prior to joining TalentRise, I was a managing partner of Broadleaf. I was a managing partner of TalentRise, executive retained search firm and RPO that we actually sold to Broadleaf approximately 3 years ago. And then prior to that, I was with Aon Hewitt's HR BPO outsourcing businesses. So thanks very much.
Thank you. And last but not least, Maria, checking in from Argentina.
That is correct. Farther away, different continent, but still connected. So first of all, hi everyone, and thank you Lamis and Brian for having me. So my name is Maria Castro Nevares. I'm based in Argentina, and I am LATAM RPO and MSP practice leader. And I am also global director for one of our biggest RPOs for an oil and gas client. I've been with the company for 3 years now. And Manpower Group, as you might know, we've been around for more than 60 years, present in 92 countries. We have close to 4,700 RPO-only recruiters. And we've been named by the Everest Group one of the biggest RPOs for the last 12 years. So that I know is enough credentials. We've been doing 25 years in RPO, but one of the awards that we are very proud of is being recognized as one of the most ethical companies also for the last 12 years. So we are super proud of that. Prior to this, I've been doing RPO or some sort of recruitment for a long time. Prior to this, I worked in IBM and Kenexa. And that was for a long time. And then prior to that, I was doing HR in the hospitality industry. So for a long time, very service-oriented career growth, I would say.
I don't know about a long time, but you've certainly got a wealth of it packed into the time you've been doing it. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So the subject of today's call is total talent acquisition. And I have to say, this is the buzzword or buzz phrase of the year, maybe the past 18 months. It has gotten an awful lot of attention, both in the enterprise as well as in the supplier community, whether it's an RPO or an MSP. I'm talking about total talent acquisition. And what strikes me, though, is depending on who you ask, you might get a different answer as to what that means. So I thought we might just go around this group and just give us a quick take, give our listeners a quick take as to what your perception or perspective is on total talent acquisition. And let's go in reverse order. Maria, why don't you start?
All right, thank you. So that's interesting because we discussed with Jen and Jason in this group, and I think we were all in the same lines. And for me, there is like a key word that keeps on popping up, at least for me, which is holistic approach. And holistic being the key word. And this is just a blend of people and sources and tools and technology. It's really very end-to-end, A to C, broad approach to talent acquisition. Obviously, we can get into more detail and we can discuss sources and how to attract and retain, etc. But I would say for me, it's exactly that, this holistic approach that we need to have when talking about talent acquisition.
Thank you. Jen, would you like to share your view or expand on that one?
Yeah, I'm very similar. You know, for me, total talent management is the convergence of a client's RPO or full-time hiring solution integrated with their temp solution or their contingent workforce solution, as Maria said, to create a holistic approach to talent management. And it's oftentimes through one workforce solutions provider. So.
Thank you. And Jason?
Yeah, agree with both Maria and Jen, and I think just to add on to that, it's a comprehensive approach to where candidates, where applicants are in the process of their employment journey, and it's really about a provider to meet those candidates where they are, in respects to the clients that we're serving. So really understanding where their needs are, and I think we've seen this with the current economic conditions, inflation, recessionary headwinds, the importance of having a really flexible approach at the very beginning of the process to define what types of labor that they need. There's really a shift, as Brian said, and I think momentum around MSP programs, RPO programs, and really designing contract labor strategies and supplier strategies to meet those client needs and what their overall business objectives are. So, I think others, whether it's total talent acquisition, total talent management, or total talent, I think there's three different terms that I've heard bandied about. We're certainly seeing a lot of momentum going for the remainder of this year and looking forward.
Well, those are all great, and I think we're largely aligned on what that definitional perspective is. But it sounds a bit aspirational, because from our perspective at Talent Tech Labs and working with the enterprise as we have, we see where they're spending their money on talent acquisition. And it's, they're spending a ton of money on promoting their recruitment marketing, buffing up their employer brands, really trying to crystallize compelling employee value propositions, extreme focus on candidate experience, and recognizing how impactful that is on their overall success in hiring. At the same time, we see the percentage of the workforce that's coming in through the contingent channel continuing to rise. And it has been on an uptick naturally, but then things like the pandemic, which allowed people to work remotely, has opened up the floodgates to even greater percentages of organizations, workers now being brought in through that contingent channel. And so, some numbers citing as high as 40% of the total workforce might be coming through the contingent channel. And so what struck us, though, is the disconnect with the amount of time and money that the corporations are spending when they're approaching their own hiring needs compared to what is coming in through partners when it is strictly just a contingent channel. And so we started to ask the question through surveys that we run on an annual basis. We started doing this about 3 years ago, asking HR leaders, how long do you think it will be, or do you foresee a convergence of the folks in talent acquisition working with the folks in procurement to approach this in a more holistic way? And as late as 3 years ago, we sort of saw the low 70% of them saying it's on our roadmap somewhere in the next 2 to 3 years. And we continue to ask the question, and it's inched up ever so slightly. But I have to tell you, of all the enterprise clients that we support, I can't even name 5% of them that would still say, hey, we're doing both in one place. So this holistic approach, though I think we understand what we're shooting at here, still seems to be really elusive to the enterprise. And so maybe we could use some of this conversation to try and unpack, what's going on here, and help this audience maybe help propel this phenomenon forward through some level setting and maybe some enablement around the way we speak about it and the way that we might be able to deliver against it. So from your perspective, I'm going to ask each of you this. Why should total talent strategies be something that employer organizations want or should embrace at this point in time? Maybe start with Jason this time.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a good segue into what we're talking about. I think there's been a slower roller on adoption of total talent. Just like you said, there are some silos within internal organizations or clients, whether it's, if it's a contract labor program, it's generally driven out of procurement, or full-time is run by HR, talent acquisition, and building bridges and building, having those conversations together with all the folks in the rooms. I do think it's an opportunity for talent acquisition leaders to lean into this, because I think their perspective around talent and attracting top talent into their company, regardless if they're full-time or contract labor or 1099s. It's important to bring the right skill set to the business to meet their needs. It is a building process, though, without a doubt. It's not like you just a holistic approach. That takes a long time to build that credibility and momentum within a client to drive the change that you're looking to see. So I think there are some system related issues. Brian, you and I have talked about that. There's within an applicant tracking system, that's where full-time hires happens typically. Within a larger contract labor program, it's run through a VMS, and those systems often don't talk to each other. Where we've put together strategies with our clients is really around that point of sale. And when you think about the point of sale, it's when that job requisition is created, right? And when that job rec is created, regardless of the system, asking those questions from a delivery team: is this a full-time hire? Would you consider, temp to perm? Would you consider a contractor to fill the role if we're not able to do that? So really testing their thinking, the hiring leader, HR, et cetera, about what type of job is going to be most important, and would they consider all avenues just to find the best talent? So I think, there's an enterprise strategy, there's bringing stakeholders together to understand the challenges that we're facing in the tight market. And then there's kind of that point of sale approach, which our delivery team can impact by having that conversation and getting those fills. One interesting fact from all of the programs that we serve is for MSP, for contract labor programs, about 25% of the assignments that come through our staffing supplier channels actually convert to a full-time hire. We're seeing about 25 to 27% of contractors that convert. Sometimes it's between 90 to 180 days, depending on the terms of the agreement. But it's a really important channel to bring on full-time labor from a talent acquisition perspective when they think about their overall sourcing channel. So
let's hold that point, because I think that has some really interesting dimensions to it. Jen, let me ask you again, why should client organizations consider a total talent strategy at this point in time, from your perspective and what you've observed?
Yeah, so similar to Jason, and we do focus on the mid-market. These companies there's a war for talent out there. It's real, and it's when a mid-market client like such as ours is facing off against a Fortune 100 or 500 or even 1,000, they've got to do everything they can to pull all the strings to get the talent in the door. And I find that when they open up, as Jason said, an opportunity and think about getting the work done differently, being more flexible with how the work gets accomplished, particularly because of the greatest work from home experiment ever that just happened to us, right? I mean, we've got a couple clients that are saying, we want the people to be in our offices, and we're pushing back hard and pushing back with data on the complexities of trying to find workers, particularly top talent, that want to go back full time and don't have to go back full time, because there's plenty of opportunity out there. So I think now, given the complexities of finding people that want to work in an office or go into an office even every day, I think that's a perfect reason why companies should be thinking about the flexibility that they need to bring to different types of jobs, so that they can have access to the top talent and in a total talent management atmosphere.
That's great. So you're really emphasizing the why now, given sort of external events, and I think those are all very, very compelling. But I think we all believe that this has probably got longer legs than just why now. Maria, maybe you could elaborate if you have any other perspectives on why or how organizations should be considering this total talent strategy at this time for the long term. I think you're on mute, though.
I'm in mute. That's like the quote of the year, right? You're in mute. Sorry about that. So if I think a little bit of where we are at right now, just to provide some background, we are when we talk about talent shortage, we are at the highest, the peak for the last 15 years. And we have employers, 68% of employers reporting having a challenge fulfilling those roles and finding the right talent. But also, and it's interesting what you said about contingent work, also 65%, if I'm not mistaken, are relying on contingent work to be able to fulfill those roles. So I think that what we're seeing from our clients is a little bit of using all the sources available, because this provides them with flexibility, for example, to scale up, to scale down. And if you're not able to project long term, then obviously contingent work could be a solution. But again, talent shortage is at its highest. And I think, to be honest with you, if we only talk about contingent work, then we fall short again. We need to think about providing, like Jen was saying, flexibility in everything, shifts and dates and vacation time. And we need, and you mentioned EVP, very important, EVP, and companies are working on that as well. I think we're still undergoing this reshaping of new models, and we're still testing the waters. And I mean us, because clients and ourselves as companies. And I also would say, Brian, diversity. It's not just contingent work, it's female, it's women. Is not too long ago, a client launched a very interesting campaign on sescentennials. So there are so many different ways of LGBTI+. I mean, there's so many ways of getting to those sources and being diverse. And then again, having that approach to total talent management. I would say again, so then contingent work is just part of it, or one of it. I will just take the entire portfolio, let's say, or sources.
That's great. So from everything we've heard, these are really strong and compelling reasons as to why organizations should be moving in the direction of, and even more rapidly than they are. So I'd really like to unpack a little bit, what do we think the impediments are? Like, what's in the way of stopping clients, or at least putting friction around their process to get to a place where they can more fully embrace and take advantage of the benefits that would very likely come from a total talent acquisition strategy? Maybe we'll go back and start with Jen this time.
Yeah, I would say one of the inhibitors, I guess, that I've run into over the course of my career often is just the sheer siloedness of the HR function, the procurement function, the business function, right? And you know, which one has, you know, more power or more, or, you know, whatever it is to make the change happen, right? Change management is difficult. And, you know, I think for me, that's probably one of the largest, is that the companies and the different organizations need to get on the same page. I can tell you from my experience, the clients that I've worked with that have HR and procurement in the room at the same time from the get-go, and understand the plan and the strategy, and then bring in those business leaders that have probably, you know, are very, you know, more influential than others. They move quicker, they move faster. They have a lot more success and a lot less difficulty when it comes to change management. So I would say for me, that's probably the number one thing.
Maria, what are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more with Jen. I think that when we see procurement points of contact that understand talent acquisition, everything runs a bit smoothly, because we see both interests being on the table. But I would add also that we know that, again, the trends, particularly technology-wise, the trends we saw prior to the pandemic have now been accelerated, and it's urgent. I mean, we all need to be there, and this digital transformation is happening right now. So we see that 80% of our clients are investing, and like you said, they're assessing tools, they're taking a lot of time to see what works, building their return of investments or business case to invest. What I would say, and we talk about this a lot, is that now maybe we should focus on technology adoption. We can bring technology in. Hopefully one day we'll have the ATSs, the VMSs, everything connected. As Jason was saying, that would be the BHAG, the dream come true. But then we need to work on that culture that adopts the transformation and that embraces digitalization. So I think, and Jen said it, the change management maybe, right? So we can have the Ferrari of the technology. We just need to make sure that we foster that culture that really knows how to drive it and enjoys driving it, I think.
That's great. Jason, what would you add in terms of impediments or friction points that you've seen in clients more fully embracing total talent acquisition?
Sure. And listening to Jen and Maria, I kind of said, all of us have said like, hey, bringing HR and procurement into the room, and I think Maria, you pointed out, I think we need to get IT in the room as well, right? Because when we talk about systems integration and pulling it together, and so hard to get them into the room, especially security related issues that oftentimes crop up that we're faced with. I think it's an opportunity for us to bring in IT as well to help facilitate some of that change. Both of them said inertia, just that organizational inertia is certainly an obstacle that we face, and just continuing that momentum that our delivery teams face. I think just over the past couple of years, probably two other things have cropped up with pushing forward with TTA is competing priorities. I mean, especially with COVID, it's just, it's been a bit of whack-a-mole that we've had to deal with our leaders dealing with all the regulation and situational changes that they're facing. And then I think also just change of stakeholders, right? We had certain stakeholders and leaders on board with getting the momentum, and they fundamentally believed in the strategy. And then they move departments, they leave the organization, and a new person steps in who's brand new into the role, and there's a re-education process. And I think those are a couple of other worthy things to point out as well.
Yeah, that's my favorite, Jay. Starting all over again.
Yeah.
Right?
You're like, oh, are you kidding me?
No, please don't leave.
Now.
Please don't leave. I had you convinced. Please don't leave.
We spent a year and a half going through this, and I just had a current client. It's like, I'm moving on. And you're like, oh, golly.
No, don't move on.
Yeah.
So that's
or move somewhere else where you can be a client again, right?
Yeah, so true.
Yeah. So those are great. I heard a lot of alignment around the silos. That's clear. We heard about inertia, fear of change. That's great. And Jason, I'm glad you brought up IT, because that kind of opens the door to the whole realm of data. And if I had to suppose, I'm guessing that there's a lack of visibility as to what benefits can we identify through the data that can support the movement towards total talent acquisition. And so when I hear people say we have a hard time making the business case to justify changing the way we do things, I don't think that it's a lack of will as much as maybe not having the data to support the business case that says this makes sense to change either our processes or our technologies or our mindset around how we do things. Would any of you like to address how you've helped customers with these friction points, whether it's getting them in the same room, that I think we've touched on that around the siloing, but maybe around the visibility, around the metrics that we think could be improved if total talent acquisition were adopted. Any things that you would suggest to clients or that you've successfully put in front of them as compelling initiators to try to move them forward? Let me start with Maria on this.
Okay. That's a big question, Brian, and a great one. So examples and how we do it. So let me start by saying what we do now. I don't know if the right thing is to say that an ATS falls short already. I think we have very powerful tools in the market. I think that we do right now is what we do and what we discuss with our clients is, okay, let's build a suite of technologies, because obviously you need your traceability, you need your historical information, but, and you said this, you need this strategic data to make smart decisions, real-time live data to make those intelligent decisions, as well as, and not just data, but as well as attracting candidates. Again, talent shortage, we need to be attractive. So that is a conversation that happens a lot. RPO and even MSP are processes that are measurable with KPIs, with SLAs. So it is a pillar, it is the basis of these services. There's no service that doesn't go with dashboards with data and results. I think there's still room to grow. I agree that, and you were talking about challenges before. I know, I was looking at some data right now, and we're talking AI, machine learning, and this applies in every aspect of total talent, because again, attracting candidates, retaining, predicting performance, matching candidates to the best positions, and then in the end, having that data that will help you make smarter decisions. And when I talk about technology, right now, I think there's something else in the mix that needs to be taken into consideration, which is the tools that help us track what's happening in the market. Right now, we're seeing a lot of benefits from using tools that gives us also real data, total talent or talent acquisition data from the markets, pretty much live, that feeds our processes, that helps our clients and organizations fulfill their talent needs.
That's a great point. We refer to that latter set of technologies, which are on the rise, as labor market intelligence tools. And they've gotten really smart. You know, it used to just be like Bureau of Labor and Statistics and scraped data from a job board that would give you sort of that, DICE would tell you, are there people at this price point in this market? But today's labor market intelligence tools have the ability to use artificial intelligence and machine learning to really provide insights that can be very compelling for organizations to understand the costs associated with, is this skill set available, and what's it worth to us to leave a job unfilled for how long? Let's just come back to the question about helping clients overcome these points of friction. Jason, did any things come to mind there? We talked about, of course, the siloed. We talked about the lack of fear of change, and then we started to unpack a little bit about the visibility. Any tactics that you've been able to deploy that have moved or nudged these issues forwards in the minds of your clients to help them adopt this?
Yeah, and I do want to, your point earlier, if I could just make a comment on comp data. I think over the past year, we've really using external comp data to help advise our clients, especially on pay rate structures, which has changed so dramatically over the past year. It's really helpful. I think you're spot on. We use a tool called EMSI, which gives a great kind of glimpse of the market supply and demand. And I think educating hiring leaders on what that looks like is just to share with the audience. I think that's been something that's been really effective for us. Just in terms of overcoming the impediments that we mentioned, we talked about earlier, inertia, et cetera. There's in coaching my delivery teams, it's often repetition is your friend. Just continuing to beat that drum and constructing a strong value proposition that's not a generic value proposition of what total talent acquisition, could be better, cheaper, faster, et cetera, risk compliance, but just really aligning that value proposition directly to the business strategy. And so stitching those two together and, really understanding what those core drivers are for the business in terms of what talent total TTA is going to offer the client. So thinking about that value proposition. So repetition, constructing that strong value proposition, that's really aligned to the culture. I think the executive sponsor is another person that can help move that needle, right, at more senior levels. Sometimes our delivery teams get stuck in let's say procurement and HR, but that both senior leaders can really help elevate that conversation to be more business oriented.
Thank you. That's great. I see Jen nodding. Would you like to add anything or any other friction points that you've been able to help people overcome?
That's exactly, when I consult with a client, you're always trying to convince them as to why. But for me, it's about concrete versus concept, right? Case studies. Where have we done this before? What were the outcomes? What was the value? What did they save? What did they, what they get in return? And when you share those powerful stories, you often get exactly what you were looking for as a client that's engaged, that's ready to make the change, and that wants to work with you to complete the work. Jason had a very good point. The executive sponsor, very important to any type of complex workforce solution implementation. At some point, we're going to need their muscle. We're going to need their voice. And so it's a very important role that the executive sponsor plays, and it needs to be engaged both from the provider side, but also from the client side.
Those are all great points. And maybe if I could just take that last point, because what you're talking about, I think, is having a degree of intimacy with your clients at a high level so that you can have strategic conversations candidly. And clearly one of the parts of the workforce that an RPO partner might not traditionally have eyes on or access to is the internal workforce, which today, where people are exiting companies rather quickly, Great Resignation is a real phenomenon. And I know that the enterprises are struggling with how do we make use of the people that we already know. So do you feel like RPOs are in a position to get intimate enough to understand and help the client think about ways that you can orchestrate the internal workforce and either creating upskilling programs or pathways forward where that becomes part of the total talent solution? Maybe start with Maria, and then if others want to chime in, please do.
To be honest with you, Brian, it's actually daily work for us. I'm lucky enough to have the sister brand or offering that specializes in consulting, in HR consulting. So we do, from an RPO perspective, we do get to see the internal workforce because many times we're dealing with internal candidates. But when we sit down with clients and now we talk about ESG, net zero, obviously focus is reskilling, upskilling if it's not in the market. I mean, we have a great asset. Company's biggest asset is their own workforce. So we do work with that, and we work with hiring managers, with executive sponsors. And if we need to, we bring in our HR consultants to help with that. It could be retraining or upskilling or creating new content. So we were talking about a holistic approach, and I think it's Jen said just having one vendor to like one stop for all. So I'm lucky enough that within my company, I'm able to do that. So I know that puts me in a little bit of an advantage, but anytime that I have, and if I can expand on this a little bit further, right now, a lot of our clients have business goals, or I would say social goals to fulfill D&I targets by certain year, 2025, 2030, etc. So through RPO, we even work on that. We even work on getting those hires, getting those individuals in the door, and then fulfilling those targets. So we go beyond and probably also look at internal workforce when we are just, recruiting. It's not just external talent that we look for.
That's great. So you've got a great vantage point on that.
I'm lucky, I know.
Jason or Jen, do you have something to add to that about your positioning to be able to help in those ways?
So I'll jump in, Jay. So we've had some conversations about, obviously direct sourcing and making sure that, silver medalists, contractors, alumni, retirees, et cetera, all are included into a talent community. Utilizing technology to manage that network and that community, and then using that as potential tier zero, supplier type, agency type tier zero for the next round of requisitions. And then you've got a known body, a known entity that's coming back into your walls, and you obviously save costs in training, time to productivity, et cetera. So we're starting to have those conversations. I think that a lot of clients don't traditionally think of an RPO that way. But again, if you also have a workforce solutions component and you're starting to do that on the contingent side, which you should be, right? That's definitely a buzzword these days. There's no reason not to introduce it on the RPO side or by an RPO provider.
That's great.
I agree. I think just to pile on to what you said, the direct sourcing is a lever that we're really using within our MSP programs, and our leveraging the RPO expertise to support direct sourcing for contingent labor and tying those together. I think that's one of the thing that's really helping build upon the momentum of our total talent acquisition programs, and also with what Maria said around diversity. When you really help enhance and our clients' diversity goals, when you really look at a broad workforce solution and not just in a particular job type. I'm looking to hire a full-time person. It really rounds out the diversity sourcing efforts and enabling us to do that. But we're really focused on direct sourcing. I think a good example that we had recently is a large manufacturer was experiencing really a skills knowledge gap from turnover that was happening along with retirees. They're putting in their notice and moving on. And so they've had this, new people that were coming in were not fully trained. So we developed a direct sourcing solution in partnership with the HR leadership to, let's take everybody in their HRIS system that's retired in the past couple of years, let's build an alumni network of people. The HR group is communicating with them in partnership with Broadleaf around, hey, inviting retirees to come back as contract workers because of the skills gap. And with so many, roughly 3 million people retired out of the pandemic, retirees are looking for more flexible work really on their own terms. And we had, I think it was about 300 or 400 retirees express interest, and about a 10% conversion of people that actually came back as contractors. So those are just really unique ways that you can address talent challenges with total workforce solutions to drive change.
That's a great example, great little case study. And so,
Brian,
yeah, go ahead, please.
there's a quick question from the chat group, if I may.
Go ahead, please.
So thank you, Joshua Smith, for sending it in. What strategies can you share with the group about how you plan to navigate total talent management on the cusp of a potential economic downturn?
So who wants to answer that?
Can I get a moment? Good question.
I'll jump in if it's okay. Jason, while you take a breather and get a drink. Actually, I think that some of the strategies, the sourcing strategies, and the other things that you implement when you're implementing a total talent management program drive cost savings. So in my opinion, there's no better time to do it. Whether it's, you're sourcing differently, you're delivering cost savings because you're getting a holistic view of visibility into market rates and driving those down. If you already have, one solution, but maybe not the other, bringing in the contingent, or even an RPO strategy to help your organization. If you're using agencies, RPO are often more economical. They're often packaged up a little bit differently and to deliver cost savings. So I actually think it's the best time to do it because your executive C-suite is looking for cost savings opportunities.
Excellent. Anything to add?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I got my moment, so I can. But having been through a few of these recessions, I think Jen's right. The time is perfect because when we're coming into a recession, temp labor is going to uptick, right? I've seen over the past year or two, like full-time hiring's been on. Our RPO business has been going bananas as well, hiring full-time hires. But when there is a little bit of a pullback, contract labor, the flexibility of it, especially for executives, just becomes that more important. So to have a strong contract labor program in place as part of a total talent strategy it just makes a lot of sense to kind of navigate the potential headwinds over the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months.
And I would say in my case, I'm already there because of a global approach. I already work it with countries with crazy inflation rates and crazy economies. And I have to agree with Jen and Jason. Every crisis also provides opportunity. But I think the good thing for RPO, I would say it is a little bit of an advantage as well because of different things. Jason just described temp labor. So that provides flexibility to companies. Same thing happens with RPO providers or services. It's cost efficient and you're not having a fixed cost within your company. So we can go in and out, and then in the end, once you look at your yearly results, it will be beneficial. So if I have to say, then if we think about RPO only, then it is a good service to be working in because it really does provide a lot of flexible, cost-efficient solutions for our clients.
Thank you. I think those are all great responses. So I think we'd all agree, though, that we're in the early stages. This is still somewhat of a nascent concept that's on its way to much wider adoption for all these compelling reasons. But let's think about bridges or maybe accelerators that we could talk about that might move it forward a little more quickly. And Jason opened up the prospect a little earlier with one thing he started to talk about, which is already a known sort of bridge, if you will, which is this sort of contract to hire or temp to perm or try-by phenomena, which in fact sounds a lot like a melding of contingent into full-time. Is that a good case study to use? Is that a way that you can help clients maybe use that as an example as to why they should be thinking at this more holistically? Any examples, or does that show up in your world? Jason, you started. Maybe you can elaborate, and then we can go around.
Yeah, sure. I think one, in temp to hire, try to buy situations. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, Brian. So I think it's a good strategy to use, and one of the things that benefits it is really around cycle times. You can get somebody in earlier, they can try you out, they can feel out the culture and make sure that it's a good fit. The challenge with that, though, is that when you're doing passive sourcing or identifying people that already have a full-time job, for them to step into a temp to hire situation, like the sourcing pool just contracts super quickly. So you're like, okay, we're not able to execute on that because it's such a, the quality of talent that's coming through. But I think it's a great strategy when you talk about total talent. It's wherever they're at in the process. We have a client that is very open to contract labor, even 1099s. And so we're able to validate if that 1099 meets those risk requirements. We had a situation of a systems implementer that our recruiter, it was really interesting. Our recruiter sourced them, and this person was working full time, but really wanted to go 1099. She had an exemplary resume, just like off the charts good for this hiring leader's role. And because of the openness of considering somebody, we just sent it over, which it wasn't even part of the cards, but they ended up getting hired a couple of weeks later. We validated that they had an actual legitimate 1099 business that would lower the risk. So there's just different ways that people are thinking creatively to get the right talent in the door to execute on a skill set that the business needs to succeed. So just a one-off example that kind of popped up that was interesting.
That's great. Maybe we can use a few of the minutes that are left to talk about another potential accelerator or bridge, which is maybe technology. And right now, as has been cited in parts of this conversation, the technology might actually be a moat. You've got the procurement side of the organization that largely lives in a VMS. And then on the talent acquisition side, of course, they've got their ATS and then a whole host of other tools that help them with recruitment marketing, with employer brand, with candidate pooling, being able to curate and cultivate talent pools and using candidate relationship management tools and bots and things like this. Are there technologies that you are today able to bring, being an RPO partner, that might accelerate the way clients can more fully adopt a total talent acquisition model based on the tools you bring to enable that? Maria, let's start with you.
That's a tough one. So we see different, to be honest with you, and you asked for examples. I have different examples. Sometimes client comes with their own set of technologies and tools. Some other times we bring our own. So whether or not they get adopted, and that word has been popping up, that is probably a top-down and executive sponsor effort that we need to also get. I mean, it's not just us arriving with an amazing technology and then things happen overnight. I also think, Brian, that it's important. We were talking at the beginning, I think Jen mentioned company size. I think we also need to think what works for each of our clients, because technology can run very expensive. We know that, right? So, and then we have amazing tools, but then we need to be ready and prepared to address different budgets, different company sizes. So I think it is, you were just saying, the challenge, I think it's just on us as consultants to also be able to measure and identify what really works, not just to have one mindset and there's no one size fits all here. That would be probably like my silver lining. Other than that, examples here, we have plenty. It has to do always with getting better data and being more out there, attracting and having a better experience. And I would say employee, candidate, hiring manager. So it relates to that, being able to track, measure, and I think, again, there's still room for growth, but there is a lot of powerful tools that we can use for TTA.
Yeah, and I would say that definitely, at LevelUP, we bring our own tech stack if the client needs it. It does have to do with the size and the maturity of where the client is along their talent solution spectrum. We've got clients that, want to use testing software like Glider AI and others. So it's just about keeping your channels open, your channel partners open inside of our tech stack to make sure that what the client is looking for, that you can deliver. And again, the size of client that we're dealing with, 90% of the time, we're bringing our tech stack to them because they just aren't mature enough to have gone out and procured it on their own.
That's great, and that's market size specific, right? So that's very relevant. We've got great empathy for the RPO industry generally because of the hand you're dealt. Certainly in the large enterprise where you're forced to use client systems that are not configured to help you prove how you could be successful with them. So we feel like RPO. To be a good RPO partner with a large enterprise, you do have to be able to fight back with tools that you can bring to the party that help you prove that you're being successful or show the difference as to how that's actually happening. Jason, do you have any points to add to that before we move on?
Yeah, I think in the enterprise level, you're spot on. The legacy ATSs, many of our clients are expressing discontent with systems, and we do have to, many times we're not going to change their process, so you have to adopt what their current process is that's built in the ATS. I think where two things that we bring to bear, and similar to Maria and Jen, we've got a tech stack that we can stand up, but oftentimes it's a point solution. A lot of the AI AI tools are point solutions that we can plug in to what's needed and really help automate some of the interactions between candidates and our recruiters, interview scheduling, just some of the back and forth stuff that's either phone tag or text tag in trying to get something scheduled. So, texting tools have been very effective, not only on the sourcing front, because we're finding, a lackluster engagement rate for candidates when we're doing email campaigns. Sometimes they can be less than 5%, where texting is much more effective. So just really looking at point solutions oftentimes with our enterprise clients to impact change.
Those are great
Brian,
points. Go ahead. Sorry, if
I may, because I've said, there is room for growth, but having said that, I think that nowadays RPO, MSP go hand in hand with technology. You can probably not separate the two. And I think there are tools that have allowed us to become very efficient, not only from a delivery perspective, but also from a cost perspective. And that's thanks to machine learning, AI, predictive behaviors, and matching the right talent or skill sets. So it's very exciting. There's a lot out there that we can use and that we are using currently.
It's a very crowded field, and picking those tools is hard. And so if I had to make a suggestion, and getting back to one of those barriers, which is a lack of data and visibility to make a business case, my suggestion would be, if you had to focus on any one tool to bring, it should be something around the reporting realm that could look into the various systems that you do use, yours and the clients, to create dashboards that make some of these observations more evident, and things that you can show and track as programs or initiatives, start and stop, where you can actually make the case and give them the data they need to maybe embrace total talent acquisition more fulsomely. We do. Go ahead. I was going to offer questions from the audience.
We do have a question from the audience, and it is technology related. Good question from Tim about timeline. So his question is, what kind of timeline is realistic for a client to expect when trying to align and connect different systems and security for their ATS, tech stack, web, etc.? Tim makes the assumption that overestimating the timeline, it might be better than underestimating, but what would you expect the average time to be? Is it 6 months, over a year? What is it based on that panel's experience?
Who wants to jump in on that one? That's a hard question.
I think it's somewhere between 6 and a year, right? Again, it depends on the engagement of the different business units, right? As to how fast you can move. When you're implementing a workforce solution, it all comes down to, is the client ready? Do they have a good change management strategy? Do they have good executive buy-in? And are the partners, the solution providers, ready to go and, able to implement on a timeline? But I think to get to the full gamut, it's at least 6 and probably more like closer to 12. But that would be my response.
I think, at least for me, that is a key topic during the implementation process. I've seen anything from weeks to months. I don't think I've seen a year, because now we get a lot of pressure on moving really fast. I have to say, I'm not an IT expert. I'm a good user of what the technologies applied to these services. So I think there's a difference between, are we implementing a technology that is standalone, that will do part of the process, or are we covering the entire process? Are we having to integrate? And go into what Jen was saying, nowadays we know there's a lot of safety measures and concerns when you integrate systems and technologies. So having the right SMEs and the sponsorship there while you implement, it's critical. So I've gone through very simple implementations that can take nothing, weeks, a couple of weeks, to having to build portals and one stop for all and connecting systems. So then again, we're talking about months and months. I think it's important that there is a little bit of a PM work done at the beginning during the implementation process, setting expectations and bringing in the right people that will be available during that time, because I've also seen that. We need the right people, the right experts to be there with us that whole time, not to get or experience delays.
Great.
Yeah, and let me just clarify really quick, Brian.
Sure.
I was answering it from a, how long is it going to take to implement a total talent management kind of solution, not just a tech. So just to clarify that.
So in the few minutes that we have left, then we are coming up on time. I just wanted to sort of see if we could sum it up into a key takeaway. And I'm going to ask each of you to just think about and share with the audience, if you only had to provide a bit of parting advice to your peers in the industry, what would you be advising them to be saying or doing with their clients and prospects to help them more fully embrace and realize the benefits of total talent acquisition? Jason, briefly start with you.
Sure. I think the flexibility that you provide your organization, and I'm talking more from a TA leadership standpoint. I think many times they're focused on the full-time strategy, and what I've often advised our clients is, the total workforce solution. The world has changed over the past couple of years, and business is looking for flexibility, and the perspective the talent acquisition has across all hiring is hugely valuable to the business. And so, contract labor often resides with procurement, but they really need your help, especially as we kind of navigate the water. So I often just say lean into workforce strategies and really TTA, and really start to understand how it can impact your organization.
Thank you. Maria?
I would say that this challenging time, talent shortage, skill shortage, it's a great opportunity to be very creative. So we can see it as a negative and challenging time, but it truly opens us to be more creative, to push the boundaries and limits, and to become more sophisticated in a way. So if I think RPO, for example, we no longer just do recruitment. We do so much more. We are tech experts and market intelligence and DNA. Just in 1 hour, we touched on basis on so many topics. So I would say that it is the opposite of being discouraged. It is a time to be creative and come up with agile, flexible, innovative solutions, and the sky's the limit. I think it's very, very exciting times.
Great. Jen, last word for you.
This is a talent-driven market, and this is not going away. Talent is driving how they want to work, when they want to work, where they want to work. And if a client isn't flexible to bring in the talent that they need, as opposed to how they want to engage them and engage them compliantly, they're going to lose the war for talent.
I like that, Jen.
Yeah.
I like that too. I'll tell my clients, yes.
Super informative and very well said. Panel, I think we're at time. I just want to thank you for all your preparation and all your sharing during this conversation. I think it's been tremendously informative, and I hope the listeners got a lot out of it as I did. So I want to thank you each and every one for the time you spent and for sharing your thoughts so candidly with the group. And Lemise, thank you for having us and allowing us to put this on for you today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure. I'd love to have you back. You did a tremendous job. And I do want to thank all of our panelists, Jen, Maria, Jason. Thank you so much. Wonderful insight and really good dynamics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Lemise.
Yeah.
Bye,
guys.
Jen. Bye, Maria.
Bye.
Bye-bye.